Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The decision by Dillian Whyte to walk away from a final IBF eliminator with Kubrat Pulev, it's robbed the Bulgarian of a $1 million payday. And as such, the 37-year-old, not happy at all. He's come out swinging at Whyte and his promoter Hearn. As we know, in a surprise announcement, he's now fighting former WBO champion Joseph Parker on July 28th. And not only did that come as a surprise to fans in general, clearly Pulev blindsided by it, left reeling, and he's posted as a result of that this statement to his own website. So it says, "I was expecting Dillian Whyte and his team to run away from the fight, but I didn't expect them to be such bullshit artists. They are extreme manipulators and plain schizophrenics. I can't believe what I'm hearing and what a tricky way they chose to run away from the fight in Bulgaria. The whole time Hearn kept talking in circles about negotiations and how they are still trying to bring me to the UK. All this while a date and place was already announced by the winner of the purse bid, us. We delivered a formal IBF contract that they didn't sign. What negotiations are we talking about here? This is not the farm market. There are rules. You lost the bid. What more is there to talk about at all? What a completely unlogical statement about us not having money. Ha ha. We won the IBF purse bid rights and we almost doubled the money they offered. Nobody wants to fight Dillian Whyte? Question mark, exclamation point, and so on. You are delusional, man. First of all, I never refused, and I still want to fight with you. Dillian, if Hearn is misleading you somehow, let me tell you personally, I am still waiting for you in Bulgaria to help you get out of the delusion and bring you back to earth." Certainly, you can feel the rage there in that message from Kubrat Pulev posted to his personal website. And there is quite a bit to unpack there, as you can imagine. So I'll start by asking a couple of questions first. I want to ask the question, should Pulev actually be surprised that Dillian Whyte didn't take that fight? And also, is this just this message that we've seen, all this outrage? Is it just a bit of a put-on? Because an argument can now be made that he will potentially step into a much easier fight for his final eliminator. But, the downside with that is probably with a smaller payday. I'm sure he'd be angry about that. But I'll come to all the nitty-gritty on this soon, but it's something I do want you to wade in on. But first, we know that Bulgaria's favourite son Pulev, he had been in very high spirits after the May 24th purse bid, when it was announced a third party called Epic Sports and Entertainment had outbid his own promoter, Sauerland, and outbid Hearn's Matchroom to win the purse bid for the IBF final eliminator with Whyte. And that winning bid, so have a look on screen here, $1.5 million US. And that's clearly nearly double that of Hearn and Sauerland. And Hearn, in particular, he wanted to stage the fight in London on July the 28th. They'd already booked the venue before the purse bid had been held. They had that date locked in, if not for Whyte, for someone, but they wanted it to be for Dillian Whyte, the Hearn that is. So the little-known Epic Sports and Entertainment, it's based in the US, but it's got very strong links to Bulgaria, and that's through its Bulgarian boss, Ivalo Gotsev. And it had until June 8th to get its contract signed, everything squared away, and the fight must take place within 90 days. So that purse bid, announced on May 24th, so that would put it August 24th. And Pulev's split of the purse would have been 75%, as ordered by the IBF, so that would have earned him just over $1.1 million, 1.125 to be exact. And Whyte's end of the wedge would have been $375K. And, speculation, it was rife immediately that that fight was going to go to Bulgaria or perhaps to Germany. And later in May, that was confirmed by another Facebook post by Kubrat Pulev. And you may not have seen this before because it gained very little traction, very little coverage in the sort of mainstream media and even on YouTube. And even Pulev alludes to those comments in his most recent website statement, because you would have heard in that website statement he referred to there was a date that was locked in a place where it would take place. But that May 29th post from Kubrat Pulev on his Facebook page, it stated it was a 95% certain it would take place in Bulgaria, and it would be held somewhere around September the 1st. And all that becomes important because after Eddie Hearn, lost the purse bid, even after that May 29th statement, he was still publicly saying that they were working with Epic on where to stage the fight. And I even heard him say in an interview that essentially Epic Sports were looking to shop the fight around, basically trying to offload it to the highest bidder, someone who was willing to sort of, help them run the promotion, looking to get it somewhere. So, the whole locked in Bulgaria and on a certain date, that was not mentioned at all by Eddie Hearn. Whereas the narrative from Kubrat Pulev, it suggests something different entirely to what Eddie Hearn had been talking about. And hence, him unloading on Hearn in particular, and Whyte, calling them bullshit artists and extreme manipulators, because they were still talking about bringing it to the UK, working on options, working with Epic, when clearly Epic, from what Pulev is saying, basically had the thing strapped down for a potential date in Bulgaria. And we can't forget as well that Pulev, he wasn't Whyte's only option on the table at the time. Whyte had another eliminator that he'd been ordered to take part in. This other one, WBC eliminator, to face Luis Ortiz. And that was going to be for the second mandatory position. And the purse split for that fight was going to be a 50-50 even split down the middle. That had been ordered by the WBC. But what was obvious, to me at least, from Eddie Hearn's actions and statements over time after losing that purse bid, was he was still dead set on keeping the July 28th date. We know Hearn, once he has these things in place, he likes to follow them through, and he'll keep his dates, even if it's, some of the fighters will change. Because remember, February the 3rd was meant to be Dillian Whyte. He couldn't get the fight made then, so then Lawrence Okoli ended up heading that card with Isaac Chamberlain. It was a British beef card at the O2. But the fact that Whyte, in this instance, from the purse bid, was only going to get 25% cut of the payday available, the 75-25 split in Pulev's favour, Whyte would have had to travel to Bulgaria. That wasn't something that Eddie Hearn and Dillian Whyte were ever looking to entertain, especially with the O2 booked for July the 28th. Hence, before the Parker fight was announced, the media speculation in general shifted from a Pulev fight to an Ortiz fight being made, because they were looking at that as the other option, because it was the other option, publicly at least, that was on the table. And Hearn, he even said that Ortiz, that was the option they were looking to sort of sort out and potentially make. But as that happened, he instead whipped together a bigger deal financially with Joseph Parker to keep that July 28th date alive. And that's now filled in, and it's a pretty good fight. So if you want to say that Whyte has ducked Pulev or he's ducked Ortiz, well, that's your business. But clearly he wouldn't have been able to face both anyway. We'll have to see what happens with Dillian Whyte's place in the rankings, because he hasn't accepted these eliminators. But truth be told, I'm happy, very happy with the Parker fight, so I'm not complaining one bit. But if you are, well, that's your business. But Pulev, he's feeling aggrieved, and you can clearly tell that from his statement. But we have to ask the question here, is he really just crying into a cereal? Is this real? I mean, it looks like the next cab off the rank is going to be Alexander Dimitrenko. So if you have an IBF eliminator, Kubrat Pulev, Alexander Dimitrenko, I mean, you'd have to say, who do you favour in that one? Dillian Whyte, he spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, saying he was sure that Pulev didn't want to fight him, that he'd rather have the easier fight of Dimitrenko, that he'd try to make it hard for him and force him to take the Ortiz option. And remember, Dimitrenko is a guy that Kubrat Pulev has already beaten. A Pulev-Whyte fight, it would have been a relatively even matchup, whereas a Pulev-Dimitrenko matchup, well, we know who would be heavily favoured in that one. Pulev already has a win over him, and he would have been heavily favoured to get another W over the German. So you have to ask yourself, how cut up is Kubrat Pulev really? How disappointed is he really? Because potentially he's going to face a lesser ranked and a lesser skilled guy. It's an easier fight. And it's likely a fight that would take place in Bulgaria. But I guess the downside there is the potential payday. Well, it could be, half that of what he could get or would have got for the Whyte fight. And going back to one of the original questions that I posed. So with Whyte having the smaller cut, his team indicating that they wanted the fight on a certain date in the UK, should Pulev have really been surprised what's happening? It's hardly a massive shock, is it? I mean, I think a decent chunk of us just figured that Hearn and Whyte, they would weigh up what an Ortiz deal looked like, if that was sort of worked out, presented to them, and then they would probably take that to the UK on the date that they wanted. That was clearly an option that was there for them. But then a big spanner called Joseph Parker has been thrown into the works, and obviously that fight's been made. And Duco boss, David Higgins, who promotes Parker, is chummy with Hearn. Clearly that's helped grease the wheels to get a deal made fast. And they wanted to keep that date, July 28th at the O2. It's a good fight. I mean, if, or maybe, getting back to Pulev here, when he wins the IBF final eliminator, I wonder, will he offer Whyte a fight then? Because that's what he said in a statement, that I'm waiting for you in Bulgaria to help you get out of the delusion and bring you back to earth. Is he really going to offer Whyte a fight? Because Whyte could lose on July 28th, for example, and is Pulev going to do him any favours then and say, I'm still waiting in Bulgaria? I mean, I highly doubt it. Boxers say all sorts of stuff that, they never held to, it never eventuates. And my gut feel is that these two will never ever meet in the ring now. And even if they did, it would only be on UK soil. I think that much is clear. Do you have any sympathy for Pulev here? I mean, that's one question. I thought it was reasonably clear that after the failed purse bid, Hearn was obviously looking around at the options, looking at an Ortiz fight. They were weighing up what was palatable, looking at the date going, we want to keep this July 28th date. Or should we actually be giving Hearn and Whyte a bollocking here for stringing Pulev along, as Pulev basically claims, until something better came along? Or is this just boxing and Pulev needs to really stop crying crocodile tears, stop crying them into his cereal and man up, and just realise actually he might be a bit down on the cash from his next eliminator, but he's probably going to win it and then be the mandatory to whoever holds the IBF title? What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.